Giovanni, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Starting Over with Shannon. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation because, as I said to you before, I really resonated with your approach to self-discipline. As somebody who struggles a little bit on the self-discipline front, or not, giving into temptation too much and all of that, I thought a lot of the general dialogue and videos and so on out there are a bit hardcore. It's like, what is the latest Navy SEAL doing to build mental toughness? And I was just like, oh, this is too much for me. I feel like it's so far away. So actually, you having much more of a gentle, approachable, while still, clear and on the topic of self-discipline, I thought, yeah, this is going to resonate with me and the audience too, I'm sure. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here.
So I want to start with the question of what is self-discipline to you and what is it not?
Okay. So let's start with what it's not. Self-discipline is not beating yourself up. It's not self-punishment. It is actually self-respect. It is you respecting your commitments to yourself. It is you prioritizing the things that are most important in your life. It is you living in harmony with your goals, with your values, day in and day out. So self-discipline has two core skills in it, if you wish: awareness and willpower. Now, the problem, as you mentioned, is that the way self-discipline is being taught these days, it's very much a willpower-only approach, that you beat yourself up to do the things that you need to do. And it's all about mental toughness. There's a bit of that drill sergeant feeling to it.
Yes.
And I call this the military self-discipline. It works for some people, but it's not for everybody. And it takes a lot of energy. My approach is awareness first, then willpower. Because when we start with awareness of who we are and what we want, what are our aspirations, awareness in the sense of training our mind to be more skillful with the thoughts, the desires, the triggers that come in the present moment. When we start with awareness, the whole journey of self-discipline is much easier. And you still need willpower, but it feels more natural to exercise willpower. It feels like it's something that you actually want to do because it's helping you. It's like you coaching yourself to achieve your goals. And that small tweak makes a huge difference for most people.
Yeah, I feel that because I wanted to ask you actually the intersection between self-discipline and willpower as well. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think people often equate them two together, right? And assume, well, I don't have a lot of willpower, therefore I'm not going to have a lot of self-discipline. Is there a nuance there?
So willpower is our capacity to override unwanted impulses and manage thoughts and emotions. It's our capacity to, in a way, manage our state. That maybe there are triggers outside of us pushing us to go left, but we know that we should go right. Or maybe there are triggers inside of us pushing us to go for that instant gratification, to procrastinate on difficult work. But we know that the step forward towards our goal is this way. So willpower is our capacity to resolve these self-control conflicts in favor of our long-term goals. It's, in a way, an expression of self-mastery.
So you see, I'm just thinking of today. It's my 30th birthday tomorrow, and I decided to go buy myself a birthday cake. And it's like, oh, I'll save it for tomorrow. Did I save it for tomorrow? No. I had a great big slice, and then my fiance was like, where is your self-discipline here, lady? I decided though that I actually genuinely wanted the cake, and there was no post-cake eating regret. And I guess that's an important point, right?
Right. So that, in that example, eating the cake beforehand didn't have any long-term consequences that is going to prevent you from achieving your goal. But typically in our day-to-day life, we make decisions that are taking steps away from our goal. And self-discipline invites us to be aware of what matters most for us. And then to ask in that moment after moment as we're making a decision, is this a +1 in my life or is this a -1? Is this helping me build the person that I want to be, the future that I want to live? Or is this kind of keeping me stuck where I am? And then we make more decisions that give us +1s. And we forgive ourselves so we don't mind so much the decisions that we take that are a step away from it. In mindful self-discipline, we don't beat ourselves up. We don't use shame. We don't use guilt. We know that that doesn't work. We just use awareness that, you know what, in this habit, there's this pattern in me that is still not so helpful. And I'm just going to become aware of it. And I'm going to reassert my intention to do different tomorrow. And that is enough. No beating yourself up required.
Yeah. And I'm curious, linking to your story here, because you realized that you had quite a decent amount of self-discipline, but it wasn't what you were initially interested in. Is that right?
Well, you know, self-discipline is a very broad term and it encompasses many different skills. I remember, you know, as early as I was 8 years old, that someone gave me a box of chocolate for my birthday. And I loved chocolate and I still like chocolate. But I told myself, I'm only going to eat 2 pieces per day. So this lasts a long time. And no one ever taught me that. You know, my parents are definitely not like that. So somehow I had the seeds of that skill inside of me. But in other aspects, I was not disciplined at all. I didn't have patience. I didn't have perseverance. I didn't know many things about habit building and the impact of the environment on us. These are things that I learned as I went through my journey of personal development. But, you know, when I was moving out of Brazil into Australia, I decided to change careers. I have a background in law, and I was living and working here with law. And then life was not working here for my wife. So I said, okay, let's try our life in Australia. And law, the Brazilian law, is completely useless in Australia. So I had to either learn everything from scratch or try something new. And I felt, let me try something more interesting, more exciting. And at that time, I was really into apps. Like I had just bought my first iPhone and I was in love with become an app developer. I would teach myself. And that was my journey. And that was an intense journey of self-discipline, because I had to persevere in something that I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. And I didn't have any special background in IT or math. And I was going to compete with people who had a bachelor degree in math, perhaps in IT, perhaps a master's degree. So as I was studying that topic and trying to wrap my head around the concepts, often self-doubt would come in. And, you know, it was a painful process because it's navigating a new world and I don't have the right tools and knowledge and context. But I decided to believe in myself. I decided to put in the hours, day in and day out, and see how far I can get without questioning myself, without letting doubt spoil the journey. And this is something that I actually talk about in the book. I call it the not now technique, where you decide a time in your life where, you know what, I'm not going to doubt. I'm not going to allow doubts to spoil this. I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And when you do that, you give yourself space, you give yourself a chance to show up as your best and to succeed. So that was one journey of self-discipline that I went through.
And did that I'm curious with that idea that you just mentioned of saying not right now. So that's really to curb fears or limiting beliefs or insecurities in order to start taking action in the direction that you want to go. How long did you try that for, or do you suggest other people to try that for?
You know, the not now technique is like the snooze button in the brain. You just pray, okay, not now, later. You keep snoozing the doubt, the fears, the insecurities, the distractions, the procrastination, the excuses, whatever negative stuff is coming up and preventing you from being your best self. You just snooze that. And you're not saying, no, you can, I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to pay attention to you. I'm never going to have this thought. You're just saying, not now, later. And when you do that, somehow we are tricking our brain. Because if we just say like, no, like this is not true, or I'm not going to believe this, part of us will rebel against that. And it's very hard to win in this way. But when you say not now, let me just focus on this for a while and see what happens, then you are tricking the brain and you're creating that space. You're giving yourself the chance to succeed. Now, as to how long, you know, it's different things for different people. It could be an hour every day where you write without being insecure about your writing skills. It could be 1 year in your life where you devote yourself fully to one business idea without doubting, without getting distracted with other shiny objects. It could be a 30-day boot camp where you are doing the exercise and following the diet, and you're not stepping on the scale every day to see if it's working or not. Depending on what you want to achieve, what is the habit that you want to build, the change that you want to make, you can use the technique to give you that space and just leave the negativity aside. And then you will deal with it later if there's still the need for it.
And I guess the premise of that is that there's no real need to deal with it later, because you'll often find in the process of doing that, you're building your confidence and self-efficacy.
Right. You're tricking your brain, basically.
Yeah. Yes to tricking the brain. Okay. So for you, I mean, that sounds a lot in terms of moving to a new country and the years, the sense of I've invested all these years into becoming a lawyer, and now that I can't use that. Was there any part where you found it difficult to be present and to have confidence in the direction of your future because you were hung up on those elements? Or do you feel like you could just let go and be open to the new opportunities and the new place and the new start?
I was very much excited about exploring something new. I think I was already at a point in law that things were kind of very repetitive and boring. And I knew that if I wanted, I could get back to that. So it's not like I was burning out the bridges. I feel that that gave me some security to go and try something new until the very end. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But at least I will know that I have tried my best.
If you were to kind of give 3 key life lessons you learned throughout that period, what would you say they are?
Well, the first one is to believe in yourself, that you can do so much more than you think you can. And if you believe in yourself, then you are energizing your journey, you're energizing yourself, and you're going to have more energy to overcome the challenges that come. But if you don't believe in yourself, you are defeating yourself before you even begin. And when you are against yourself, then no one can help you, right? So believing in yourself is essential, and that is a choice. Maybe you grow up in a family that in a conditioning that doesn't really help you believe in yourself. Maybe you were always criticized or spoken to in a condescending way or bullied. So maybe there is this conditioning from the past that doesn't help you believe in yourself, but you still can believe in yourself because there is incredible potential inside each of us. I would say that that is the key lesson. And the second lesson is to build a habit around the main activity that will help you succeed. In my case, it was studying the coding books and trying to code, right? So I was doing that basically every free hour that I had at nights, on the weekends, I was doing that. And because I did that consistently with discipline, not worried about how difficult it was and if I'm making progress or not, but just doing it, that allowed me to eventually get to a point where things begin to click. And then they start clicking very fast, and then everything makes sense. So those would be 2 key lessons. Let me see if I can think of a third one.
Anything about change or ego or the direction or concept of your life? Because I think a lot of people have often an idea of where their life is going, even if that's not like a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan or anything, but certain concept. And so when we have such significant changes and transitions, there can be mixed perspectives. I find something about, okay, my horizons have broadened. That's great. There's new pastures in front of me. Wow. What is the opportunity or possibility here? And then also a part where it's like, who am I? Am I experiencing an identity shift here? Is there something else beneath that? Like, yeah.
Sometimes it comes from within. Like there's a part of you that is getting ready for some shift. And then if you get in touch with that part, if you say yes to it, if you have a mindset of experimenting and trying things out without giving into fear, then you may find something very exciting begins to unfold. And sometimes it's a force of circumstance. You know, in my case, it was a little bit of both. I was getting tired with IT, with law. I was getting excited with the world of apps. So that was coming from within me. I wanted a way of working that was kind of more meaningful. I wanted to create things, not just kind of make decisions and write petitions, but like to create something new that people could use. So all of that was coming from within. And then there was also the shift of environment that then created the opportunity for me to fully embrace that. So whoever is listening to this, you may find that there is something inside of you that needs to be seen by you. And don't be afraid to recognize it. Don't be afraid to look at it. Because sometimes it's almost like, I don't want to even touch that, because if I touch it, I'm going to really get excited about it. And then I'm going to have to make changes in my life to accommodate it. And then what are going to people think? I cannot just live life being a painter or whatever that is. But you cannot ignore that forever without consequences. Sooner or later, it will come up. So better to just be open and see what is that aspiration inside of you.
I mean, totally agree with that. It reminded me of a previous conversation where we were talking about finding clarity and people knowing kind of what they want from their life and how to work out the next step to take for them, whether that be in relationships or work or whatever. And the kind of question posed was, have you ever considered the possibility that you don't have clarity and you're stuck in overthinking patterns because you don't actually want to deal with the how of making that thing happen? So you stay in there like, oh, I'm not sure, maybe now's the not right time, or maybe later or whatever. Actually, you just keep deferring something that is dormant within you that at some point is going to rise up and be a call of, why did I never write that book? Or why did I never move to that country when I really had the chance to? I held myself back. And I think that really, it points to exactly what you just said there. And sometimes that experimental attitude that you say, or the not now exercise, give yourself time, like it create that openness and expansion, room to grow, that I think so many of us don't do because we feel like we've got to be responsible or stay on top of things or, yeah.
Right. I see this mistake all the time. People get bogged down about the how before they even really connect with the why.
Yes.
Right. So you don't give yourself a chance to be excited about a project. You're already thinking of all the ways that it's going to be difficult, painful, or not going to work. And so, you cannot move forward like this. If you forget about the how for a moment and just think about the vision, right? Then something becomes possible, because once you get excited about the vision, once you've found something that is true to yourself, then energy will come, resources will come, help will come, serendipity can happen. It's there's that quote from Nietzsche that says, a man who has a strong enough why can withstand almost any how.
Yes.
So start with understanding the why and leave the how for later. Once you have all that energy, then you go deal with the how.
Yeah, I so agree. And, it makes me think of something you speak about a bit, which is about living aligned with your sense of purpose and the intersection with that with self-discipline. Because going back to what we said before about this idea of self-discipline being this tough, push through with all the energy you've got kind of attitude, we often think of that in the context of something we really, really don't want to do. But actually, that can introduce even more barriers and obstacles to actually achieving your goals than connecting with what you said, which is the why and the purpose behind that. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
Yes. The way I see self-discipline, it's all about living with purpose. Self-discipline is the best friend of purpose. Because if you have a great sense of purpose and your dream, your vision, but you don't have self-discipline, you cannot go very far with it. And it can even be more frustrating than if you don't know your purpose, right? Because it, but it's not happening. A friend of mine, he talked about someone he knew that he went into a week-long shamanic journey in the woods, and he discovered his true calling in his life. And it was something very different. And I was so excited, and he was, filled with that vision. And then he got back to his life, got a job, and just lived life normally as if, he didn't embrace that, because it takes some effort, it takes some sacrifice, but it's the only thing that will make us happy, that will make us fulfilled. Everything else will pass. Like the pleasures, they come and go, and they're very short-lived, they're very shallow. But living life with purpose, fueled by purpose, that gives a sense of satisfaction and happiness that just cannot be found anywhere else.
So, do you think that people who have a higher degree of self-discipline are people who are more connected to a vision of their life or a dream or what they desire than those who aren't?
Yes, that's one of the elements. They are really clear about what they want and the consequences of embracing that and not. And what I mean is, everyone listening to this, there are two possible futures for you. There are two possible versions of your future self. In one of them, you have embraced your goals, your values, you have developed a discipline, you have taken action, and you have made it happen. And in the other one, you haven't put that effort. You have taken the path of least resistance. You have stayed in your comfort zone. Now, one of the exercises that I go through with people is to spend some time to really see how these two versions of yourself are very different. And most people, they will see like, yes, like the first version, it's my ideal self. I feel happy. I feel proud. I feel like I've done something with my life and I am making a difference. And, they light up. And in the other version, there's a sense of regret for the opportunities not taken, the dreams not lived, the aspirations not pursued. So that is what self-discipline is really about. It begins with that clarity about what matters. And when you have that clarity, it's then much easier, because it's not, again, coming back to the idea of willpower, it's not that your willpower becomes so strong that it beats up all the other distractions and temptations. It's that your awareness of your purpose becomes so clear and so strong that nothing else can compare.
How do you have that yourself?
I think about it every day. I remember every day. I use affirmations. I have a weekly review where I review my week and I plan the next week. And again, I'm thinking about my aspirations and what have I done and what can I do better or more next week. So it's that constant remembering.
I love that. Can you actually break that down into a little bit more in terms of like practical strategies? Because I think that's such a key point. When we hear things, it's kind of conceptual and we think, great point, and then forget it. But actually something to implement, this goes along with the self-discipline idea, right? But having the little bookends or the framework to keep your vision front and center. So I heard the weekly review.
Right.
So how does that go?
So basically we need checkpoints of awareness. Just if you think about it once and then you forget about it, it will have no power to actually change your life. It needs to be top of mind. You need to be revisiting it. So we need checkpoints of awareness. If you are thinking about your goals, you can take action on your goals. If you're not thinking about your goals, you will not take action on your goals. If you forget about your values as you're making decisions in your daily life, those decisions will not be based on your values. They will not affirm your values. So awareness of your values, your goals, your aspirations, that is essential. There are many little practices throughout our life that we can do to increase that awareness. You can start the day with an affirmation that encapsulates your intention of who you want to become or what you want to achieve. And not something that you repeat mechanically, but something that you actually repeat with feeling and with intention, right? And then, so that's the beginning of the day, setting the day for it. Then you go and plan your day. As you plan your day, am I making time for my aspirations? Where is my aspiration in my day today, right? And then at the end of the day, we have the 3-question journal. And these are 3 questions we ask ourselves that help us stay on track with self-discipline and help us enhance that awareness. And these 3 questions are, how have I taken a step toward my aspirations today? And that is gratitude. How have I taken a step away from my aspirations today? And that is awareness. And what will I do better tomorrow? And that is your intention. So when you start your day remembering your aspirations and values, and you finish your day reviewing and kind of seeing like, how have I lived aligned with that or not? And what can I do better? These 2 core checkpoints of awareness that happen day after day, They will help you become more connected with your why and with your values.
I love that. I think I'm going to take a little clip and note it down and try it as my new morning routine. I'm sold. But that makes me think that is one of your framework, right, for mindful self-discipline. And I really see that there with the mindfulness coming in. It's not beating yourself up, like you say, muscling through. It's just being more present from moment to moment, asking what your intention is and checking in with yourself more regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
see how necessary that is. I'd reflected on this quite a lot myself recently, as I noticed the difference between the days where I would do something along those lines and not just quickly, when I start a work day, get up my plan of the day and my to-do list and what needed to be checked off and feel like, because I'm under pressure for time, I just want to quickly start getting into something. And I often felt way more off balance and less grounded, I think, when I took that approach than if I carved out a short amount of time to be more intentional. And I guess that's all you're asking in this with these practical strategies. It doesn't take a lot of time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. If you want your aspirations to be real in the future, you need to make them real in the present. It's as simple as that. And if you're not dedicating your time, your money, your energy to your aspirations, then you're not making them real. So these two checkpoints of awareness in the beginning of the day and the end of the day, they help you really stay true to yourself.
Yeah. And this also links a little to what you talk about with the conditioned life versus your designed life, right? And would you say that you can break down a little bit more what that is, but is it the essence of, if we aren't being intentional and aware moment to moment of what direction we want to take, what path we want to follow, then we're letting our conditioned past to just take the driver's seat.
Right. And sometimes it's our own conditioning, sometimes the conditioning of our environment. So one way that I explain awareness is space. Is there space between you and your thoughts, between you and your emotions, your impulses, your triggers, your memories? If there is space, then there is freedom. Because it means that if a negative thought comes up, I don't need to believe it. If a fear comes up, I don't need to stop what I was about to do. If a desire comes up, I don't need to go and act on it. There is space. That space is the space of your freedom. So if that space doesn't exist, then basically there is no freedom, because we are going to act as we are triggered either from within or from outside. Something happens, it presses a button, and this is the reaction. It's kind of automatic. There is no space. When there is space, you interrupt that pattern, and then you can think, do I want this or not? Is this going to be helpful? Is this empowering? Is this positive, etc.?
Exactly. And I guess I want to come on to like obstacles to self-discipline. And the first one that would come to mind based on what you just said is not having any space between. So not actually being able to move from immediate reactivity to a present response. That's a common obstacle, right? What else would there be as well?
Distractions, procrastination, lack of motivation, lack of clarity, self-doubt, excuses. These are the main ones.
And what can we do about those? I think everyone wants to know that a little more. I think I'm going to get called out if I get one of those reports on my iPhone that tells me how many times I just like tapped on my phone, and I'd give myself the lame excuse like that's just I'm just checking the time. But I'm sure that's symptomatic of our highly distracted world and our inability to focus, or at least a diminishing ability to focus.
Yeah. Well, there are multiple techniques for dealing with each of these. Maybe we can choose one of them. You mentioned distractions. I think that's one of the biggest one, because it's ubiquitous. Everyone struggles with distractions from one point or another. And again, it all starts with awareness, because distractions, they seem inconsequential. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm wasting time, but I'm also doing other things. But the problem with distractions is not so much the time that we spend on distractions that we could otherwise be spending on our work, on our aspirations. But it's also the fact that we are training ourselves to be scattered. We are training ourselves to not be focused. We are training ourselves to seek satisfaction and gratification and pleasure through things that come effortlessly, but don't lead anywhere. And so after survival, our brain wants to feel good. That is the core impulse behind everything. We want to do the things that will make us feel good, however we interpret and define that. Now, your brain wants to save energy because its primary project is survival. That is the biological conditioning, right? If the brain can get the sense of satisfaction by scrolling through some videos and having fun and clicking like this, why would it put so much effort to try to achieve a goal in the future that may or may not happen? It kind of doesn't make sense for the brain. It's like, no, let's just do this. Let's just do this. I'm saving energy and I'm getting satisfaction. I'm getting some. So what's happening is we all have this fire to achieve things, but we are satisfying this fire 1,000 times a day through things that are so small and insignificant in the long term, that when we want to work on our aspirations and the things that really matter, there's no fire left. There's no fuel left. That is the real challenge with distractions. We are training ourselves to be demotivated towards long-term goals.
Yeah. Are you big on prioritization or anything in terms of like the systems or structure that you would have in your life to facilitate more discipline? Like where does prioritization, classifying what is urgent versus what is important, or even habits, as you mentioned before, like actually giving ourselves the opportunity to create automatized behaviors so that we don't keep depleting our finite energy resources?
It's important. It's not the solution to everything, but it's important. Habits are shortcuts. And once we have automatized a certain shortcut, then it happens always that way, and it doesn't take much energy or willpower anymore. So we need to make use of habits. We need to learn how to create effective habits. They're not going to be the solution to everything. Life is too unpredictable, too dynamic. We cannot make a habit out of everything. Like we'll still need willpower to make decisions that are aligned to our values when the need arises in the moment. But one habit that I recommend to everyone that I work with is to have an offline morning, that you wake up with your phone, in airplane mode, and you keep it in airplane mode until you finish your morning routine. And your morning routine contains the 2 or 3 most important things in your life. They are the most important boxes that you want to make sure you tick every day. And you're doing that before you allow the external world to enter and begin to distract you. So yeah, that is one piece of structure that I establish with all my coaching clients, and I recommend for everyone.
And by morning routine, do you mean time for oneself prior to work, or do you actually mean even in terms of a work day that you would limit distractions so that you can do what is most important for you to move closer to your aspirations?
I typically mean what happens before work.
Yeah.
But it's also important to establish structures in your work to allow you to do deep work, uninterrupted work, rather than just checking emails every 15 minutes.
Something I've noticed with morning routines, I have some sense of morning routine, but it's not like strict, I do this and this and this and this. But I do notice, going back to what you said before, when I force myself to have that time, I am resisting becoming scatty. As you said, being scattered, I think that was such a great point and really important for everyone listening, because it wasn't even that long ago, I think, where we were being praised for multitasking. It was all about, especially women. So the stereotype and cliche goes, right? Like, women are the greatest multitaskers. And actually that's total fallacy. And that is also another thing. We just feel like we've got to juggle so much, but actually that contributes to the scattered focus that you're talking about. And I think by having something, the morning routine, you start to recognize how many impulses you have to check your phone, to just be over and done with that thing until it becomes a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
What are some key components of your morning routine, or something you suggest for your coaching clients?
The two things that I recommend everyone have in their morning routine is meditation and day planning. Meditation can be whatever technique works for you. You would end your meditation by thinking about your goals and aspirations, maybe in the form of affirmations. And then you go into your day planning, where you look at your calendar, you look at your to-do list. So this is the time that I have available today, and these are the things that I want to accomplish. What are the most important things? You plan your day, and it doesn't mean that it's going to happen as per your planning, but it skews reality towards your favor rather than having no plan. So these are two things that everyone that I work with would have a version of these in their morning routine. And then it depends on what are people's goals. I had a client that he wanted to write a screenplay. So his morning routine was basically meditation, write for an hour, then plan the day, and that's it. Other people want to include exercise or yoga, working on a side business, etc. I would always recommend that the most important activity that will help you make progress towards your goals, that needs to be there in the morning routine.
And I'm just thinking here about some people who might say, I'm just not a morning person. That's not going to work for me.
It's there are many scientific reasons to adopt early to bed, early to rise. And it's a matter of habit. It doesn't mean that you need to wake up 5 a.m. But if you can make even half an hour of time before you start your day, before the busyness starts, to make sure that you work on what's most important for you. It's a time for yourself. It's a meeting with self, and you keep it sacred. You pay attention to it. It's valuable, and so you do it. And it's habit. After 1 month, maybe you will not say that you're not a morning person anymore. You don't need to wake up at 5 a.m. again, but you can make a little bit of time in the morning. And there are many advantages for this. In the morning, we are well rested. We can make sure that something happens. If you leave it for the end of the day, you may be very tired at the end of the day at work. There may be a dinner with other people, etc. It's more challenging to keep that habit in the evening.
Yeah, I can see that. Let's go back into really the core of the how. So I see the importance of habit building, having a morning routine to combat being scatty and distracted and so forth. What about when people are stressed? Because I think everyone is reflecting on moments where, even if they define themselves as being somebody who has a lot of self-discipline or not, I think generally speaking, everyone will think, well, I know that I fall off track when I'm under pressure and I'm stressed out, and all of a sudden I reach back for the glass of wine after work that I felt like I needed and I wasn't doing that, or any other self-sabotaging kind of habit or behavior that isn't aligned with the aspirations that we're talking about. And that it feels like such a key component of this conversation on self-discipline.
Mm-hmm. Well, the three elements of habit is cue, action, and reward. So if we look at that, there is a cue, which means I feel tired. I feel that my brain is fried at the end of work. I just I cannot think about anything. I just want to relax. So that's the cue. It's that state. The action that you take is to go and eat a pot of ice cream or whatever is your choice. And then there is a reward, which is I feel better. I feel somewhat better. And then the brain linked these three, like this behavior is a good idea for this state. When I have this cue, let me do this behavior so I enjoy that reward. Now, you can organize your life in a way that you experience less fatigue and there is more energy and all of that. But still, that state will happen from time to time. The cue will be there, but you can attach a different action and experience a different reward. What if instead you go and do 5 minutes of a very light yoga, and then you feel very relaxed after that? It's the same cue. You're now attaching a different action, and you're also getting a reward. Once you go through these cycles a few times, then that is an option for your brain. I don't need to go to the pot of ice cream. I can go to the yoga or walk outside or whatever is a more aligned way to release stress for you.
Yeah. And would you say that then at some point that becomes much easier to do? Because I know so many people would say, I'm so fed up of the ups and downs. Like, I'm fed up of trying to have this new goal of losing 10 kilos or getting a promotion at work or whatever. And then I'm so well intentioned. I go gung ho, got my plans, my systems, I've got my willpower, I'm feeling motivated. And then I fall off track. And it keeps happening and happening and happening. And all I feel like I'm doing is consolidating this self-belief that actually I'm not very disciplined. I cannot resist temptation. I cannot delay gratification. What would you say in those instances?
Well, we need to break that self-defeating cycle. That's for sure. The way to do that will be different for every person. It might be that what you need to do is to improve your environment, that you don't have triggers in your environment for the bad habits that you're trying to break, and instead have triggers for the good habits that you want to build. You know, the tennis shoes next to the door, the glasses of water everywhere instead of soda. So that could be one strategy. Another strategy could be to connect more deeply with your why and to go through what I call a contingency plan, which is to know that it's not going to be easy, that there are so many failure points that can come up, and decide beforehand, what will you do when you feel tired, or when you had a busy day, or when you are sleepy, or when you have lost motivation? How will you respond when those situations happen? And if you plan that in advance, you plan your response in a way that you're still affirming your goals rather than giving up from your goals, then it's much more likely that when that actually happens, you will get a +1 and you continue in the journey. And, you know, if that happens, then there's a sense of confidence and success. Like, oh, in the past, that's the moment that I would have given in or given up. And now I did it. So maybe I can do it next time as well. So depending on the person, and this is where it gets, it's very subjective, there will be different interventions that will help a person to break that self-defeating cycle.
Yeah, I like that idea of the contingency plan. It seems very formal, I gotta say, though. But maybe that's going to help some people. But what would be some common things that are on that? Like, here's my, oh gosh, I'm highly stressed. I'm reaching for the Ben and Jerry's. What do I do? What would be on that?
Potentially. You mean like what would be the response?
Yeah, what would be on someone's plan? Because are you inviting people to then make a plan in advance of time for what they do when they are low on energy, stressed, and the self-sabotage comes back through?
Right. Because it's like, hey, you've tried to build this habit many times. You have tried to make this change, and there were many failures. So let's look at the past and see what were those failures, and let's make a plan. So when that happens again, how will you respond? And so the response may be that I'm not going to have Ben and Jerry's at home. So that it's just not an option. The response might be that when I feel like doing that, I'm just going to go take a shower or call someone or, eat an apple. So you have to find what works for you. For many people, the contingency plan is also a lot about mindset. That, I'm going and I'm writing my book, or I'm working on my project, and then these thoughts start coming up that, this is not going to go anywhere. I have no chance, etc. And even we need a contingency plan even for that. How will you respond to that self-talk when it comes up? Because in the past, it's just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Let me go check Instagram. No, how will you respond to that in a way that you continue in the journey, that you're persevering?
So that's more positive self-dialogue even. I mean, I'm really interested in that because it's something that we speak about a lot in terms of the inner chatter inside our head and how mean it can be sometimes, right?
Yes.
And so far away from your goals. What would you say in that specific instance?
It depends on what is the negative self-talk. It could be that you go and remember times in your life where you have accomplished something difficult, something that you thought, maybe a challenge that you didn't know how to overcome, and you overcame it. Maybe something that you didn't know what to do, or you thought it's not going to work, and it worked. Maybe a time where you felt like giving up, and you continued, and it was good. So it could be bringing up from resources from within yourself, from your memory, that show your capacity to deal with that. If you are talking about self-doubt, it depends on what is the nature of that thought.
Yeah, but I see that. And that obviously going back, looping to what we said at the beginning with the not now exercise, and kind of stopping that and giving yourself the opportunity to have success, to cultivate that self-confidence. Of course, if you implement that, then you will be able to have those moments to look back on, to go like, oh, wow, I finally wrote that chapter, or what did I do? I did a wellness day retreat that I could have procrastinated on for a whole lot longer, but I had to have that growth mindset chat. Really, that was like, you're never going to feel completely ready. You're going to overthink it, and then at some point that's going to drop off. Like, you have to pull the plug and just jump right in and trust that it will work out in the end. And it helped. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to move into the final fast few questions now, Giovanni. And the first thing I wanted to ask is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
So this is not an advice that I've received personally. I've learned a lot through books, but it's a quote from the Sufi poet Rumi, and I have it in a document that I review often. And he says, when you begin to walk on the way appears. And for me, that's special because, it circles back to what we were talking about, the why. Like, don't worry about the how so much. Just, if you have a why, just go with it, and the how will unfold. It talks about the need to trust and to say yes to your aspirations, to yourself, without you needing to know the full picture, because you're never going to know the full picture. We're always going to have to take action in our life with uncertainty, and that's never going to change. What can change is, will I let this stop me, or will I move forward with courage and faith? So that's what it's about for me.
Yeah, I love that. That's very powerful. And also, just a reflection point on that, it allows you to stay open to the possibility of something exceeding your wildest expectations. If I look back on things that have happened in my life, I wouldn't have planned that I would be living where I am and have the lifestyle that I currently live and all of that. And that kind of came by surprise. And that was being open. And like you say, walking in a certain direction and letting go of that egoic controlling tendency of wanting everything to be planned out and right and working out for you. So yeah, I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Second, what is worst advice on that note that you might have received?
So there's a lot of bad advice that we know is bad advice, but there is some bad advice that is masked as good advice. And that's what I would like to maybe touch upon today. And one of these is this idea that don't worry, you're giving your best, you're doing your best. And, this, there's a lot of good intention here, because it's about self-acceptance, it helps you relax. But at times, this can be very limiting. We are rarely giving our best. We are rarely doing our best. We don't even know what our best is. And when you say that this is my best, you're basically putting a cap that this is all that I can do. This is as far as my potential goes, and that's kind of it. The truth is, like, we are almost never giving our best. And then the question is, if I'm not giving my best, why am I not giving my best? Well, maybe I'm not focused enough. Maybe I'm not connected enough with the why. Maybe I am distracted. Maybe I'm telling myself some stories and some lies. So the idea that we are always giving our best, I think it's good intention, but can be very limiting at times.
Very thought-provoking, I've got to say, because I think I've been on the receiving end of that advice, or somebody saying, I just did my best, I did my best. And I found that very infuriating, because there was a part, you kind of want to say, but don't. Well, your best isn't good enough. Like, it doesn't excuse poor behavior. So I think sometimes people could lean on that as a kind of avoidance for taking accountability and responsibility. So that I see that on the one side. Then on the other side, I see, and this could be very dependent on personality, but people who have lower self-worth, perhaps perfectionistic tendencies, and they never feel like they're doing enough, but actually they're doing quite a bit, that could be quite hard, because actually maybe what they need more than anything is a self-compassionate stance.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's an interesting conversation. Touching on your first point, I'm giving my best is a 5-star excuse for toxic behavior. Right, narcissists and all sorts of toxic people in our life, they can hide themselves behind that. And like we often don't know what to say or what to do in that moment, because it's like, it's like a conversation stopper. I gave my best. Okay, so I guess I have to accept that, right?
yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Now with the second group, I agree that if I'm working with someone that is the mindset, I probably wouldn't touch on this topic, or at least not in this way. But the real solution to that is to rebuild one's self-image. Rebuild a self-image that if you learn to love yourself and believe in yourself, then there is space for you to hold the thought like, you know what? Yeah, I didn't give my best. I will do better next time. And that doesn't hurt emotionally, because it doesn't mean that you are a bad person. It doesn't mean that you are not good enough. It just means that you are a human being in a process of growth.
Preach. No more. That was great. But lastly, what is a closing message that you'd give to our listeners who want to improve their self-discipline to achieve their goals?
I would say spend some time thinking about what really matters for you and what it would feel like if you can achieve your goals, what that life would look like. And how would you feel if 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you're still stuck in the same point? And allow that realization, that difference between these two states, to be really high contrast. And that will create a fire within you to move forward, to embrace your goals and live a life that you will be really happy with.
Giovanni, thank you very much. For anyone listening who resonates with Giovanni and the things that he said, maybe less of the military style drill sergeant toughness, a bit more of the mindful self-discipline, you can find that in his book titled the same thing, Mindful Self-Discipline. And otherwise, he's quite active on YouTube, so you can connect with him over there as well. But all of the links will be in the show notes. So Giovanni, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon.